The locker room smelled of sweat and pine cleaner, a familiar tang that clung to my skin after every practice. I stood by my locker, heart pounding, as Jake's laugh echoed off the tiled walls, sharp and reckless, like he owned the place. That laugh, it was the sound of my world tilting, and I didn't even know it yet. My name's Ethan Carter, 17, a junior at Westfield High in a sleepy Ohio town where cornfields outnumber people. I'd always been the quiet one, the kid who sketched in the margins of his notebooks and kept his head down. Jake Miller, my best friend since we were 6, was the opposite, all-state linebacker, prom king material, the guy who could charm a smile out of anyone. We'd been inseparable for years, bike races down dirt roads, late-night video game marathons, secrets whispered under the stars. But lately, something had shifted. His glances lingered too long. His touches, a hand on my shoulder, a playful shove, felt heavier, like they carried a question neither of us dared to ask. It was a Thursday in October, the kind of crisp evening where the air bites your cheeks. Football practice had run late, and the locker room was nearly empty, just the two of us and the hum of fluorescent lights. I was peeling off my sweat-soaked jersey when Jake slammed his locker shut, the sound jarring in the quiet. "Yo, Ethan," he said, his voice lower than usual. "You ever think about, I don't know, what happens after all this?" He waved a hand vaguely, like he meant high school, or maybe life itself. I froze, my fingers fumbling with my shoelaces. Jake wasn't the philosophical type. "What, like college?" I asked, keeping my tone light, though my pulse was racing. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his cleats scuffing the floor. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the locker room's stale air. His blue eyes locked onto mine, searching, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. "Nah, not college," he murmured, so close now I could see the freckles dusting his nose. "Like us. You and me." His voice cracked just barely, and my stomach flipped. Jake, the guy who'd dated half the cheer squad, who'd never once hinted at anything beyond bro-code loyalty, was looking at me like I was the only person in the world. And then, without warning, he reached out, his hand grazing my wrist, his fingers warm and deliberate. The touch sent a jolt through me, electric and terrifying, and I've been shaking ever since. We'd grown up in a town where different wasn't a word people use kindly. Westfield was all about Friday night football, church on Sundays, and keeping your secrets buried deep. I'd known I was gay since I was 13, when I caught myself staring at Jake a little too long during a summer swim at the quarry. I'd spent years hiding it, terrified of what it'd mean if anyone found out, especially Jake. He was my safe place, the one person who made this town feel bearable. Losing him wasn't an option. But that touch in the locker room changed everything. It wasn't just a casual brush like when he'd ruffle my hair or slug my arm. It was intentional, heavy with something I couldn't name. I pulled back, my heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. "What are you doing, man?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake's face flushed, and he stepped back, running a hand through his damp hair. I don't know," he stammered, his usual confidence gone. I've been thinking about you. A lot." He looked away, his jaw tight, like he was fighting a war inside himself. I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. The locker room felt too small, the walls closing in, and all I could think was, this can't be happening. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally, Jake grabbed his bag and muttered, "Forget it. I'm sorry." He was out the door before I could say anything, leaving me alone with the echo of his words and the ghost of his touch. I stood there, staring at my locker, my hands trembling. What the hell had just happened? Jake, my straight best friend, the guy who'd always been untouchable, had just cracked open a door I'd kept locked my whole life. And I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, the moonlight spilling through my window, replaying the moment over and over. His hand on my wrist, his voice breaking, the way his eyes had held mine. I'd spent years convincing myself my feelings for Jake were a dead end, a fantasy I'd never act on. But now I didn't know what to believe. Was he messing with me? Was it a prank? Or was there something real behind that touch, something he was too scared to say out loud? The next morning at school, I avoided him. I ducked in the art room during lunch, sketching aimlessly to keep my hands busy. But Jake wasn't one to be ignored. He found me in the hallway after fifth period, his broad frame blocking my path. "Ethan, we gotta talk," he said, his voice low but firm. His eyes were tired, like he hadn't slept either. "About last night." I wanted to run, to pretend it never happened, but the intensity in his gaze pinned me in place. "Not here," I whispered, glancing at the stream of students flowing around us. "After school. The bleachers." He nodded, and for the rest of the day, I was a wreck, my stomach churning with a mix of dread and hope. The bleachers were our spot, where we go to talk about anything: family drama, school stress, dreams of getting out Westfield. But this time it felt different. The air was heavy with unspoken words as we sat side by side, the empty football field stretching out before us. Jake was quiet for a long time, his hands clasped tightly together. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible. I'm not sure what I'm feeling, Ethan, but it's real, and it's about you." My heart stopped. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream. Instead, I just stared at him, my best friend, the guy I'd loved in silence for years, now sitting here, unraveling everything I thought I knew. "Jake," I said, my voice shaking, "you can't just say that and expect me to know what to do with it." He looked at me then, his eyes raw and unguarded. "I know. I'm scared too." And in that moment, I realized we were both standing on the edge of something huge, something that could break us or make us whole. The bleachers creaked under our weight, the metal cold against my hands as I gripped the edge of the seat. Jake's words hung in the air. "I'm scared too," and I felt like I was drowning in them. My best friend, the guy I'd built my world around, had just admitted something I never thought I'd hear, and I was terrified of what came next. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The football field was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of cars on the highway. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, but my throat felt tight, like the words were trapped behind a wall I'd spent years building. Jake shifted beside me, his knee brushing mine, and the contact sent a shiver through me, a reminder of the locker room, of that touch that had turned my world upside down. "Ethan," he said finally, his voice rough, I'm not saying I got it all figured out. I don't even know what this is." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times, but now it felt like a confession. "All I know is when I'm with you, it's different. It's more." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Jake, you're straight," I said, the words tasting bitter. "You got a girlfriend. You've got everything. Why are you doing this?" I hated how small my voice sounded, how vulnerable, but I needed to know. Was this real, or was I just a moment of curiosity, a fleeting experiment before he went back to his perfect life? He winced, like I'd hit him. "I know what I've been," he said, his eyes fixed on the field. "But lately, I can't stop thinking about you. Not like a friend, like more than that." He turned to me then, his blue eyes fierce with something I couldn't quite name. Desperation, maybe, or hope. "I'm not playing games, Ethan. I swear." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But Westfield wasn't a place where guys like Jake suddenly questioned their sexuality. It was a town where people whispered about those kinds of people, where being out could mean losing everything: friends, family, your place in the world. I'd spent years hiding who I was, locking my feelings for Jake in a box I never planned to open. And now he was prying it open, and I didn't know if I could handle what came next. "What about Sarah?" I asked, my voice sharp. Sarah was his girlfriend, the cheer captain with a megawatt smile and a laugh that filled rooms. They'd been together for 6 months, the golden couple everyone envied. What happens when you wake up tomorrow and realize this was a mistake? Jake's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd shut down, walk away like he had in the locker room. But instead, He leaned closer, his voice low and steady. I broke up with Sarah last week. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how to explain it. It wasn't about her. It was about me. About you. My breath caught. I stared at him, searching his face for a lie, but all I saw was raw honesty, the kind that scared me as much as it thrilled me. Jake, this isn't simple, I said, my voice trembling. You can't just flip a switch and change everything. What happens if people find out? Your team, your parents, this whole damn town. They'll eat us alive. He flinched, but he didn't look away. I know, he said softly, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. I've tried, Ethan. I've tried so hard to push it down, to be the guy everyone expects me to be. But when I'm with you, I'm me. His words hit me like a punch, cracking open something deep inside. I'd spent so long hiding, so long convincing myself that Jake was out of reach, that him here, saying these things, was like a dream I didn't trust. But the way he looked at me, the way his voice broke, told me this was real. And it was terrifying. We sat there in silence, the weight of his confession settling between us. The sky darkened, the first stars blinking into view, and I felt like we were the only two people in the world. What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Jake reached for my hand, his fingers hesitant at first, then firm as they laced with mine. We figured out, he said, together. The next few days were a blur of stolen glances and careful distance. At school, we played our roles, Jake the charismatic jock, me the quiet artist. But every moment we were alone, the air crackled with something new, something dangerous. A brush of shoulders in the hallway, a text sent late at night, a smile that lingered too long. It was like we were building something fragile, something that could shatter with one wrong move. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How Jake's laugh softened when it was just us, how his hand lingered when he passed me a water bottle after practice. But I also saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted to check if anyone was watching. He was scared, just like me, and that made it realer somehow, but also heavier. One night, we ended up at the quarry, our old hangout spot. The water was still, reflecting the moon, and we sat on a flat rock, our knees touching. You ever think about leaving this place? Jake asked, tossing a pebble into the water. Like, just packing up and going somewhere nobody knows us. All the time, I admitted. Somewhere I don't have to hide who I am. I hesitated, then added, somewhere we could be us. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. You think that's possible? For us to be whatever this is? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that every moment with him felt like a risk worth taking, even if it scared me to death. Maybe, I said finally, but we'd have to be brave, braver than we've ever been. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the water. I want to be, he whispered. For you. The quarry was our sanctuary, a place where the world's rules didn't seem to apply. Sitting there with Jake, his words echoing in my head. I want to be brave. For you. I felt like we were teetering on the edge of something unstoppable. But bravery in Westfield came with a cost, and I wasn't sure either of us was ready to pay it. The next week at school, the tension between us was a live wire. Jake was still the golden boy, high-fiving his teammates, laughing at their crude jokes, but I caught the way his eyes sought me out across the cafeteria, the way his smile faltered when he thought no one was looking. I wanted to believe in his words, in the possibility of us, but doubt gnawed at me. What if this was a phase? What if he woke up one day and decided he'd made a mistake? I'd survived Westfield by keeping my heart locked away, but Jake was picking that lock, and I was terrified of what would happen when it finally gave. Friday's game was a big one, a rivalry match against Lincoln High. The stands were packed, the air electric with cheers and the thump of the marching band. I wasn't on the team, but I always showed up for Jake, sketching from the bleachers while he dominated the field. That night, he was unstoppable, weaving through defenders like they were standing still. But when he scored the winning touchdown, he didn't look at the crowd or his teammates. He looked at me, his grin bright and unguarded, and my heart did a dangerous flip. After the game, I waited by the locker room, my sketchbook tucked under my arm. The team spilled out, sweaty and triumphant, but Jake hung back, his hair still damp from the shower. "Walk with me," he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I nodded, and we slipped away from the crowd, heading toward the empty parking lot behind the school. The night was cold, our breath visible in the air. Jake was quiet, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "You were amazing out there," I said, trying to break the silence. "That touchdown was insane." He shrugged, but a small smile tugged at his lips. "Only 'cause I knew you were watching." His words were casual, but they hit me like a freight train. I stopped walking, my sneakers scuffing against the asphalt. He stopped too, turning to face me, his expression serious. "Ethan, I meant what I said at the quarry. I'm not backing out, but I need to know, are you in this with me?" My mouth went dry. This was it, the moment where I had to decide whether to leap or retreat. I thought about Westfield, about the whispers that could ruin us, about my parents' disappointed faces if they ever found out. But then I looked at Jake, his eyes wide and earnest, and I realized I'd been running from this my whole life. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. "But we have to be careful. This town, it's not kind to people like us." He nodded, stepping closer. "I know, but I don't care about them. I care about you." And then, before I could process it, he closed the distance between us, his lips brushing mine in a kiss so soft it felt like a question. My heart stopped, then surged, and I kissed him back, my hands finding his jacket, pulling him closer. For a moment, the world disappeared, the parking lot, the town, the fear. It was just us, and it was everything. But the moment didn't last. A car door slammed somewhere nearby, and we jumped apart, our breaths ragged. The lot was still empty, but the sound was a reminder of how exposed we were. "We can't do this here," I whispered, my voice shaking. Jake's face was flushed, his eyes bright with something like defiance. "Then we'll find somewhere we can," he said. "I'm not letting this go, Ethan. Not now." The next few days were a tightrope walk. We stole moments when we could, a brush of hands in the hallway, a shared look during class, but we were careful, hyper-aware of the eyes around us. Westfield wasn't just small, it was suffocating, the kind of place where rumors spread faster than wildfire. And then there was Tyler, Jake's teammate, a hulking senior with a mean streak and a knack for sniffing out weakness. Tyler had always given me a hard time, tossing slurs my way when Jake wasn't around. I never told Jake about it, not wanting to make things weird, but I caught Tyler watching us one day in the cafeteria, his eyes narrowing as Jake leaned in to whisper something to me. "Careful, Miller," Tyler called out, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "People might start talking." Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond, just grabbed his tray and walked away. Later, in the art room, he was quieter than usual, his usual confidence replaced by something darker. "Tyler's an asshole," he said finally, his voice low. "But he's not wrong. People are going to notice, Ethan. We need to be smarter." I nodded, my stomach twisting. "I know, but I don't want to hide forever. I'm tired of it." The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and honest. Jake looked at me, his expression softening. "Then we won't," he said. "Not forever. Just for now." Hiding wasn't new to me. I've been doing it my whole life, smiling through the slurs, laughing off the questions about why I didn't date, keeping my sketches of Jake tucked away in a locked drawer. But hiding with him was different. It was a shared secret, a fragile thread tying us together. And every stolen moment felt like a rebellion against Westfield's suffocating grip. Jake and I found ways to be together without drawing eyes. Late nights at the quarry, drives to the edge of town where no one knew us, quiet moments in my basement when my parents were asleep. Each time, the world seemed to shrink until it was just us, his hand in mine, his breath warm against my skin. But the fear was always there, a shadow lurking at the edges. Tyler's words in the cafeteria had been a warning, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. It was mid-November when things started to unravel. The air was sharp with the promise of winter, and the football season was winding down. Jake was under pressure. Scouts from colleges were circling, his coach pushing him harder than ever. I saw the strain in his eyes, the way his shoulders tensed when his phone buzzed with another call from his dad, who saw Jake's future as a straight line to the NFL. But Jake wasn't talking about football anymore. He was talking about us, about leaving Westfield, about a future I was scared to let myself imagine. One night, we were in my basement, sprawled on the old couch with a movie playing in the background, forgotten. Jake was quieter than usual, his arm draped over my shoulders, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. "You ever think about telling anyone?" he asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like being out. For real." I tensed, my heart kicking up. "You know what that'd mean here," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My parents would lose it. Your team would." I stopped, not wanting to finish the thought. Jake's world was built on being the guy everyone looked up to. Coming out could tear that apart. He nodded, his jaw tight. "I know, but I hate this. Sneaking around, pretending. It's not who I want to be." He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "I want to be with you, Ethan. Not just in secret. I want it to be real." My chest ached, a mix of hope and fear so intense I could barely breathe. "I want that too," I admitted. "But we have to be smart. If we're going to do this, we need a plan." He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "Then let's make one," he said. "You and me. We'll figure it out." The plan was simple but terrifying. Graduate, save up, leave Westfield for a city where we could be ourselves. Maybe Columbus, maybe somewhere farther. But plans like that take time, and time was something we didn't have. The next day at school, Tyler cornered me in the hallway, his bulk blocking my path to the art room. "What's going on with you and Miller?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. "You two are awfully close lately." I forced a laugh, my heart pounding. "We're friends, man. Always have been." But Tyler's eyes narrowed, like he could see right through me. He didn't say anything else, just smirked and walked away, but the encounter left me rattled. That night, I told Jake about it, and his face darkened. "He's got no proof," Jake said, but his voice was tight. "Just keep your head down. He'll get bored." But Tyler didn't get bored. Over the next week, the whispers started. Little comments from Jake's teammates, sidelong glances in the locker room. Nothing overt, but enough to make my skin crawl. Jake noticed it too, and I saw the toll it took on him. The way he hesitated before touching me, the way his laugh didn't reach his eyes anymore. We were still careful, but it felt like the walls were closing in. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Saturday, and we'd driven out to an old barn on the edge of town, a place we'd found where no one would bother us. We were lying on a blanket, the stars bright above us, when Jake turned to me, his voice soft but urgent. "I love you, Ethan," he said, the words spilling out like he'd been holding them back for years. "I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting this go." I stared at him, my heart in my throat. "I love you too," I whispered, and for the first time, I let myself believe we could make it. We kissed, slow and deep, and for a moment I forgot about Westfield, about Tyler, about the fear. But when we pulled apart, I saw something move in the shadows, a figure just beyond the barn door. My blood ran cold. "Jake," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Someone's here." The shadow moved again, and my heart slammed against my ribs. Jake's hand tightened on mine, his body tensing as he followed my gaze to the barn door. "Stay here," he whispered, but I grabbed his arm, panic rising in my chest. "No way," I hissed. "We're in this together." My voice was steadier than I felt, but the fear was real, sharp and cold. Whoever was out there had seen us, and in Westfield, that was enough to ruin everything. Jake nodded, his jaw set, and we stood together, moving toward the door. The night was quiet, the only sound the rustle of leaves and our uneven breaths. As we stepped outside, the moonlight revealed a figure leaning against a tree, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. Tyler. Of course it was Tyler. Well, he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "Didn't expect to find you two out here playing house." His eyes flicked between us, lingering on our joined hands, and I felt Jake's grip tighten, like he was anchoring himself against the storm about to hit. "What do you want, Tyler?" Jake's voice was low, dangerous, but I could hear the tremor in it. He was scared, and that scared me more than anything. Tyler stepped closer, his smirk widening. "Just curious," he said. "The whole team's been wondering what's up with you, Miller. You've been off your game, sneaking around with your little art buddy here. Now I see why." He laughed, a cruel sound that made my stomach twist. "Wait till everyone hears about this." I felt like I was going to be sick. "You don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice shook, betraying me. Tyler's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the satisfaction there, like he'd just won something. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," he said. "And trust me, by Monday, everyone else will too." He turned to walk away, but Jake stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You say a word, Tyler," and I swear, Jake started, but Tyler cut him off, spinning back around. "You'll what?" Tyler taunted. "You gonna fight me, Miller? Or are you gonna cry to your boyfriend here?" He laughed again, and I saw red, my fear giving way to anger. But before I could say anything, Jake lunged, grabbing Tyler's jacket and shoving him against a tree. "Shut your mouth," Jake growled, his face inches from Tyler's. "This isn't a game." Tyler didn't flinch. He just grinned like he'd been waiting for this. "Oh, it's a game, all right. And you just lost." He pushed Jake off, straightened his jacket, and walked away, his laughter echoing in the night. We stood there, frozen, as his taillights disappeared down the road. My legs felt weak, and I sank to the ground, my hands shaking. Jake knelt beside me, his face pale. "Ethan, I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "It's not your fault," I said, but the words felt hollow. Tyler had seen us, and there was no taking it back. By Monday, the whole school would know. Maybe the whole town. I thought about my parents, about Jake's dad, about the life we'd both been trying to hold on to. It was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. The weekend was torture. I barely slept, my phone buzzing with texts from Jake, each one more desperate than the last. "We'll figure this out. I won't let him ruin us." But I could feel the panic in his words, the same panic clawing at my chest. On Sunday night, I snuck out to meet him at the quarry, our safe place now tainted by the memory of Tyler's smirk. "We can't let him control this," Jake said, pacing along the water's edge. "We need to get ahead of it. Tell people ourselves, on our terms." I stared at him, my heart racing. "Are you serious?" "Jake, this is Westfield. You know what they'll do to us. Your team, your scholarship." "I don't care about the scholarship," he snapped, then softened, his eyes pleading. "I care about you. I care about us. I'm not ashamed, Ethan. I'm not." I wanted to believe him, but the fear was too big, too heavy. "I'm not ready," I admitted, my voice small. "I want to be, but I'm scared." He stopped pacing and pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. "Then we'll wait," he said. "But I'm not going anywhere. Not without you." Monday morning came too fast. The school hallways felt like a gauntlet, every glance a potential threat. Tyler hadn't said anything yet, at least not that we'd heard, but I could feel the tension, like a storm about to break. Jake stayed close, his shoulder brushing mine as we walked to class, a silent promise that he wasn't backing down. But by lunch, the whispers had started. I overheard a group of Jake's teammates talking in hushed tones, their eyes darting toward us. My stomach sank, and when I looked at Jake, I saw the same fear in his eyes, mirrored back at me. We were running out of time, and we both knew it. The cafeteria was a minefield. Every laugh, every glance felt like a judgment, and I could barely choke down my food. Jake sat across from me, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet intensity, his eyes scanning the room like he was waiting for an attack. Tyler was at the other end of the cafeteria, surrounded by his usual crowd, but I could feel his gaze on us, sharp and predatory. By the end of the day, the rumors were spreading like wildfire. I heard my name whispered in the halls, saw the smirks on faces I'd known since kindergarten. Jake's teammates were the worst, their comments veiled but cutting. "Didn't know you swung that way, Miller," one of them said as we passed the locker room, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jake's face went red, but he didn't respond, just kept walking, his hand brushing mine for a split second, a silent reassurance. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Jake, my voice shaking as I told him we needed to talk. We met at the bleachers, the same place where he'd first admitted his feelings, but now it felt like a battlefield. "This is getting out of control," I said, my hands clenched into fists. "Tyler's not going to stop. We need to do something." Jake nodded, his expression grim. "I've been thinking about it," he said. "We could come out. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Tell everyone the truth." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Jake, that's insane. Your dad, the team, the whole town, they'll destroy us." "Maybe," he said, his voice steady, "but I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of letting people like Tyler call the shots. I love you, Ethan, and I want everyone to know it." His words hit me like a wave, washing away the fear for a moment. But then reality crashed back in. "I love you too," I said, my voice breaking. "But I'm not as brave as you. I can't lose my family. I can't lose everything." Jake's face softened, and he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and warm. "You won't lose me," he said. "No matter what happens, I'm here." The next day, things got worse. Tyler had posted something on social media, a vague, taunting jab that didn't name us but didn't have to. The comments were brutal, filled with slurs and speculation. By lunch, half the school was staring at us, and I felt like I was suffocating. Jake, though, was resolute. He found me in the art room, where I'd been hiding, and sat down beside me, his hand resting on my knee. "We can't let them win," he said. "If we hide, they'll just keep coming for us. But if we stand up, if we show them we're not ashamed, maybe we can change things." I looked at him, my best friend, the guy who'd always been larger than life, now risking everything for me. "What if we can't?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What if it's too much?" "Then we leave," he said simply. "We get out of this town, start over somewhere new, but we do it together." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it. Let's tell them." We chose the school assembly the next day, a pep rally for the last game of the season. The gym was packed, the air thick with noise and energy. Jake was supposed to give a speech as team captain, but he'd told me he had a different plan. My stomach was in knots as I sat in the bleachers, my sketchbook clutched to my chest like a shield. When Jake took the mic, the crowd cheered, but he didn't smile. He looked out at the sea of faces, then at me, and I saw the determination in his eyes. "I've got something to say," he started, his voice steady. "This town, this team, this school, it's been my whole life. But there's something more important than all that. There's someone." The gym went quiet, and I felt every eye on me, even though no one knew yet. Jake took a deep breath. "I'm in love with my best friend, Ethan Carter, and I'm not ashamed of it." The silence exploded into whispers, gasps, a few jeers. My heart stopped, but Jake didn't falter. He kept talking, his voice strong and clear. "I know some of you won't get it. I know some of you will hate me for it. But I'm done hiding who I am. And I'm done letting anyone make me feel like I'm less because of who I love." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. All I could do was watch him, my best friend, my everything, standing up there and laying his heart bare for the world to see. And then I stood, my legs shaking, and walked down to join him, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the weight of it all. When I reached him, he took my hand, and the gym fell silent again. "We're in this together," I said, my voice trembling but sure. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The gym was a blur of faces, some shocked, some angry, some unreadable. Jake's hand in mine was the only thing grounding me, his grip steady even as my own trembled. We stood there exposed, vulnerable, but together, and in that moment I realized that was enough. The fallout was immediate. As we left the gym, the whispers followed us, sharp and relentless. Jake's teammates were the loudest, their voices carrying across the parking lot. "Traitor," one of them muttered. "Freak," another hissed. Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't let go of my hand, not even when Tyler stepped in front of us, his smirk gone, replaced by something darker. "You really think you could just do that and walk away?" Tyler said, his voice low and venomous. "You're done, Miller. Your team, your scholarship, Your whole life gone. Jake stared him down, his eyes blazing. If that's the price for being honest, I'll pay it, he said. But you don't get to decide who I am. He pushed past Tyler, pulling me with him, and we didn't look back. The next few weeks were a storm. Jake was benched for the final game, his coach citing team morale as the reason. His dad stopped speaking to him, his silence louder than any argument. My parents weren't much better. My mom cried. My dad just stared at me like I was a stranger. The school was a battlefield. Every day, a gauntlet of stares and slurs. But Jake and I faced it together, our hands clasped in the hallways, our heads held high, even when it felt like the world was collapsing around us. We started planning our escape in earnest. Columbus was our goal, a city big enough to disappear in, where we could start fresh. Jake got a job at a local diner, saving every penny, while I picked up shifts at the bookstore. We'd lie awake at night, dreaming of an apartment with a view, of a life where we didn't have to look over our shoulders. It wasn't easy. Every day brought new challenges, new doubts, but Jake's belief in us never wavered, and that kept me going. One night, as we sat in my basement, Jake pulled out a small notebook, his handwriting messy but determined. I made a list, he said, a shy smile on his face. Things we're going to do when we get out of here. Number 1, kiss you in public, no fear. He looked at me, his eyes soft. Number 2, make sure you know every day how much I love you. Tears pricked my eyes, but I laughed, shoving his shoulder. You're such a sap, I said, but my voice was thick with emotion. He leaned in, kissing me softly, and for the first time, I let myself believe we could make it. Graduation came like a lifeline. The ceremony was tense, with half the town avoiding us, but we walked across that stage, diplomas in hand, and when it was over, we drove to the quarry one last time. The water was calm, the stars bright, and we stood there, hand in hand, looking out at the life we were leaving behind. We did it, Jake said, his voice full of wonder. We're free. Not yet, I said, but I smiled, squeezing his hand. But we will be. A week later, we packed our bags and boarded a bus to Columbus. The city was overwhelming, bright lights, crowded streets, a world that didn't know our names. We found a tiny apartment, barely big enough for the two of us, but it was ours. The first night we stood on the balcony, the city sprawling below us, and Jake kissed me, right there in the open, no fear, just like he'd promised. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, new jobs, new fights, the weight of starting over. But every morning, I woke up next to Jake, his arms slung over me, his breath warm against my neck, and I knew we'd made the right choice. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were living. Looking back, that moment in the locker room, his hand on my wrist, his eyes searching mine, was the spark that changed everything. It was the moment we stopped hiding, the moment we chose each other over fear. And as I stood there in our new home, Jake's hand in mine, I realized that was the real victory. Not escaping Westfield, but finding the courage to be ourselves, together, no matter what the world threw at us.